Morning all. By the time this goes live, it'll be afternoon everywhere except for where it's evening. And then there's all right. Just morning all. So the Calgary Flames in the season previews, we're up to Calgary now, and so first Canadian team. Do they make the playoffs? Do they not? I look at the Pacific Division and I think they should. And if they don't, this is where the pressure may start to rise on Brad Treliving. I think that he's done a very good job as the general manager thus far. For the most part, you look at the deals he's made, the contracts he's signed, most of them look pretty good. Now, Markstrom, rough first year, absolutely. We'll see how things go for him this season. So when we look at the overall numbers, the special teams tell you that Calgary was right around the middle of the league. In fact, a lot of stats will tell you right around the middle of the league. 18.3% on the power play, which was 21st. Penalty kill, 80.2%, which was 15th. On the goals for front, they had 155, which was 20th overall, and goals against, 160, which was 16th. So again, right around middle, just mediocre, a little bit below. It reminds me a lot of towards the end of Iginla's time there, where the Flames just weren't quite in that playoff realm, but they weren't so far out that they felt the need to change things a great deal. And we didn't see a lot of change this summer. And there were a lot of rumors after they missed the playoffs that we would see some kind of big change in Calgary, and we didn't. So I would think this would be the last chance for this core before something has to change. And I look at Johnny Gaudreau's contract status, and I think that's probably where things could change. And the question then becomes, if he's still in that same contract situation where he's a pending UFA, and if he's indicated he doesn't plan on staying in Calgary, but they're in a playoff hunt, do they keep him? So if you're in a playoff spot, do you risk trading Johnny Gaudreau? That may be a storyline we have to look at once, February, well, when the trade deadline rolls around. And again, that could very well change based on the Olympic participation and whether or not it happens, right? Now, the notable draft picks since 2015, you know what? They draft pretty well. They draft pretty well outside the first round, and this helps them maintain team depth. This is why the draft table is so important. So 2015, they drafted Anderson at 53. They drafted Shillington at 60, and Mangiapane was draft pick number 166 that year. So pretty smart scouting there. 2016, Tkachuk went at number 6. We then see Dubé at 56, Adam Fox at 66. I know that one still hurts, but it speaks to how smart their scouts are that they were able to get Fox that late in the draft. And Phillips at draft pick number 166. So there's something about that number with Calgary, apparently. 2017, they draft Valimaki at 16, Ruzicka at 109. 2018, they didn't have a draft pick in the top 100, and I didn't see a name in there that I said, oh, that's a big one. I mean, Emilio Pettersson might pan out, but we'll see, right? 2019, Pelche was the number 26 pick, and Dustin Wolf at 214. I think that one has steel written all over it. And then in 2020, they draft Connor Zary at 24th. So smart overall scouting by Calgary. And we'll see, again, how things turn out this year, because the exits, while they're plentiful-ish, there's just the one that I think you can't replace, and that's Giordano. And it's not just from the offensive perspective or what he brings on the blue line. It's that leadership and that captaincy, right? They, at this point, have not named a new captain. I would think has to be one of the big names, right? And I would think maybe they're leaning towards Tkachuk, maybe. Although, do you give it to Monahan, or they like, again, there are numerous directions they could go with the captaincy, I guess. Derek Ryan's also out. Josh Levo, Nesterov, Ronaldo, Demang, Nordstrom. None of them core guys you can't replace. Their new face is Coleman. Coleman, there's going to be pressure on him to live up to that contract. He is a 20-goal scorer, should be able to at least pot 20 goals for Calgary, and he does bring a lot of the other intangibles. Lewis has been added, depth player. Pitlick, also depth player. Zadorov helps to mitigate the loss on the blue line by adding another blue liner from Chicago. He is, at this point, as I'm recording this, a restricted free agent. We'll see what he gets in arbitration, unless they settle before that. They also added Vladar who is, I think, a capable backup, and Andy Welinski. Now, Vladar is interesting because goaltending is going to be a question mark with this team. And I do wonder if they're done. I look at this as maybe a good landing spot for Devan Dubnyk, although Vladar does have to clear waivers if he gets sent down. So adding Dubnyk could make a bigger headache. So their last 3 years, in 2018-2019, they were 50, 25, and 7. And first in the Pacific, first in the West. Best team in the West. And then the playoffs, they lost against Colorado in the first round. So a bit of a drop. And then 2019-2020, they finished 36, 27, and 7. Fourth in the Pacific. And they lost in round 1 against Dallas. A series which absolutely they could have won. And it was so close. And Calgary, you guys know what I'm talking about here. 2020-2021, they finished 26, 27, and 3, fifth in the North. And really it was that Montreal had so much space on Calgary and Ottawa and Vancouver that, yeah, Calgary wasn't catching up. But I thought Calgary played well at times. They don't get into any kind of playoffs, of course, because they finished fifth in the North. But Calgary, to me, seems like a team that should be able to bounce back. They have enough good parts of this roster. Again, a lot of this is going to depend on them being able to absorb the loss of Giordano's leadership. So you look at their forward group. It's pretty good. You've got Gaudreau, Lindholm, Tkachuk are going to get a lot of the attention, but Coleman, Monahan, Dubé as well. So if that's their top 6, that's not bad, although Mangiapane has shown that he can get top 6 minutes and play very well. Backlund, Pitlick, this is a good top 9. And there's a lot of skill here, and there's the ability to roll 3 potential scoring lines here, right? And then you have Lucic, Froze, Ritchie, Lewis, Phillips, Ruzicka, Godin, and they are fighting over the rest of the spots in that forward group. I do still think that top line, and I don't know if they have to get their Gatorade back. I don't know what it is that they need to get their mojo back, but they have to do something. They have to find that switch and turn that back on. And sometimes that can be tough. I've talked about a couple of the more prominent super lines, West Coast Express in Vancouver, the Legion of Doom line in Philadelphia. These lines don't last a long time, and the NHL learns how to defend against them. It is up to Calgary to put together a top line that frustrates and definitely makes it more difficult for their opponents to figure it out. 20th in goals for, not good enough. Coleman should be able to get them well beyond 20th. They should be higher than that. So on the blue line, again, without Giordano, it hurts. But this is a deep blue line. You've got Hanifin, Tanev. Now, Noah Hanifin and Chris Tanev had a fantastic start last season. Weren't allowing 5-on-5 goals against, and then it got kind of choppy from there. But the start of the season, they were actually really, really good. And Tanev is a solid defensive defenseman. I think Hanifin just has that next gear offensively. We'll see if he ends up being a defenseman that gets maybe 60 points in a season at some point. I only say that because at the time he was drafted, there was a lot of hype, and I still think the ability's there. Valimaki, Anderson, don't go. Oh, Shannon thinks he's going to get 60 points. No, I'm not saying he's going to. I'm saying the potential is there for at some point in his career to hit 60. So Valimaki and Anderson round out the top 4 here. Rasmus Anderson, I think, will become the leader on that blue line if he's not already. Mackey and Zadorov then would round it out. Although you've got Shillington, you've got Walensky. Gravel's there as well, and DeSimone is there. There's depth on the blue line. And with this schedule, which is going to be pretty rough, that depth is going to be challenged. And if your team doesn't have depth, it could be a problem. Which brings us to goaltending. Markstrom, I absolutely believe, can have a bounce back year. Yes. I've seen him have rough years before and bounce back from them. So I do believe he can bounce back and start making people really like that contract. But while I like Vladar as a backup, then you've got Parsons and Werner as the 3-4 in the organizational depth chart. I don't think Wolf is going to get a shot at a roster spot yet. I think you got to let him develop. He's 20 years of age. So I do wonder if they need to go out and pick up another. Louis Domingue is still out there. Maybe they bring him in to be their number 3. They know he can clear waivers. And then in a pinch, if they need to go to Vladar and Domingue for, say, a week or two while Markstrom's hurt, that might be palatable. But we'll see, right? So that is the one thing I look at with Calgary, and I say, okay, that could be a problem if Markstrom ends up with some kind of an injury that's even, say, midterm of 3 weeks. That could really submarine their season based on just how tough this schedule really is. Now, their prospects, I went with Connor Zary, Jacob Pelche, and Dustin Wolf as being top prospects for them. Zary is going to end up with a spot on this roster over the next year or two. I don't think it's this year. Pelche may very well push towards a roster spot. So, yeah, and I know yesterday I had 18 Buffalo forwards, and I still have people saying, you didn't list this guy. You didn't. Yeah, I'm not listing absolutely everybody in an organization. I'm listing the ones that are most likely to end up with roster spots, and teams will tend to go towards veterans, guys who have experience, guys they know what to expect with. And if it's a prospect, they can move them to the minors without worrying about them clearing waivers. So that definitely makes a difference when it comes to setting your opening night roster. A lot of it now is more based on how they did in camp than I think it used to be. I think it's easier now for a kid to have a really good training camp and have that GM make that decision to keep him around. I think they stick around more now than they did, say, 5-10 years ago, but still. You can count on the veterans probably getting a lot of roster spots. So their Stanley Cup odds right now are 40-1, which compared to some of the teams I've done previews for, that's not bad. Their last Stanley Cup, of course, is their only Stanley Cup, 1989. My prediction for them is third in the Pacific. I do think they end up making the playoffs, and who knows, maybe we get a Battle of Alberta this year. You can always cross your fingers and hope, right? We've been close over the last forever, but it hasn't got there. Maybe this is the year we see it. And they start their season at Edmonton on October 15th. Then they're at home against Anaheim on the 18th. A team that was their nemesis, not so much now. And then they go out on the road. They go to the East Coast on the 21st in Detroit, 23rd in Washington, 25th with the Rangers, 26th they tangle with the Devils, 28th they're at Pittsburgh, and then on the 30th they're at home against Philadelphia. So let me double check. Yep, that's a home game. I had to double check with the app on my phone because I thought that seems kind of weird. They go to Pittsburgh, then they're home against Philly. Yeah, that's the way it's scheduled. So they will have back-to-back against Pennsylvania teams, and one in Pittsburgh, and then 2 days later they're home against Philly. It's going to be a rough time for travel for teams in the Pacific when they're going to the East Coast. And again, because we do have that 3-week break still baked in for the Olympics, it is a pretty dense schedule. And so that as well is why we need to keep an eye on depth charts. Guys are going to get hurt. You're going to have injuries where guys who miss 3 weeks and in a normal season might miss 9 games, maybe 8. Now they might miss 11. They might miss 12. So it means that it magnifies injury problems. It magnifies issues with then getting into the playoffs because it affects more games. So we'll see how it goes. But I do have some optimism when it comes to Calgary that they should be in the playoffs. And yes, if they were in the Central, I would have them lower, but in the Pacific, you've got the 3 California teams. You've got Seattle, who I think have a decent roster, but at this point, I don't see them as being that threat. And you still have the Canucks as well. So that's 5 teams. That's more than half the division right there. So all right, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.